Without additional revenue, what programs will you reallocate to pay for infrastructure, such as roads and bridges?
You know, it's interesting that the Democrats always start with roads and cops and teachers to tell us we need higher taxes. And there's never any waste. Nothing we can cut. Well, it's nonsense. We've got a $23 billion budget here in the state of Missouri. If you look at the rate at which the budget has grown since the 1980s, it's grown well ahead of the rate of inflation. We've got plenty of money. We're spending it in the wrong places. Let me give you a few specifics. First, the Department of Economic Development in this state. How can anyone from that department go to the legislature and ask for a quarter with the performance they put in over the past 3 years? The worst economic performance of any state in the union, and they come and they ask for more money each and every day for tax credits, for things like China Hub. It's ridiculous. You largely eliminate that department. When you flip open the book, the Missouri Blue Book, you will find about 50 boards, bureaus, and departments in the Missouri Division of Economic Development. Every one of those has commissioners that serve on them, many for salaries as high as $100,000 a year. The purpose for all of those boards is to pass unnecessary rules, regulations, and burdens on businesses. I'd start with a big X through those 50. I would largely eliminate Missouri Department of Natural Resources. Agriculture is the largest industry in the state of Missouri. Missouri Department of Natural Resources is one of the most aggressive environmental regulators in the country. We make it harder to do agriculture in Missouri. Do you think they make it harder to make cars in Detroit? Do you think they make it harder to make computers in California? So I would largely eliminate that, combine its remaining functions with the Conservation Department. You begin going through the government this way, not with just a little cut here, a little adjustment to the budget, but fundamental restructuring, you'll begin to find a lot more money. Now, long term, the real money is in the social welfare programs. 35% of the state budget's Medicaid. If you add together Medicaid, pensions, and welfare, you're at 60% of the state budget before you spend a dime on roads. We need to have a 5-year lifetime limit on welfare in this state. That will eliminate a huge burden and put people back on the work rolls. We've got to moderate the growth of Medicaid, in which we have to compete with the federal government. And long term, we've done a pretty good job of restructuring state pensions. It'll get worse before it gets better, but it will get better long term. If you get rid of the unnecessary departments, unshackle the economy of the state of Missouri, we'll have money for government to do what it needs. It just needs to stop doing the things it shouldn't be doing.
Bill Randles, some of this I think you discussed in that answer. They're wanting to know what specific items you will cut from the state budget, but also how will you identify waste?
Well, yeah, I've covered a good deal of that already. I mean, the first place, politicians always tell you they're going to find waste, and they never get around to finding it. They just keep wasting. You have to start with the question, what do you want government to do? If you don't do that, if you don't understand the purpose of it, you never get around to getting it under control. And I believe the core functions of government are public safety, a fair set of rules for folks to operate under, education, and transportation. Now, those things, we spend a tiny fraction of our money on compared to the other things I've just mentioned. So once you reorient your focus, it becomes a little bit easier to streamline government down to what it ought to be doing. Now, the things I've just described, in addition to eliminating unnecessary burdens on business, will free up enough resources for our government to function as it needs to, but get out of the areas where it shouldn't. Politicians always focus on what government can do, but we need to also remember what government can't do. I think politicians ought to take a version of the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm. And right now, government's doing a ton of harm. We pull government out of the areas I've described, the private sector will flourish, we will have the money to do what we ought to do, and we'll stop doing what we should.
Second question.